May 24th, 1941, Denmark Strait. The pride of the Royal Navy, the battle cruiser HMS Hood, and the Royal Navy's newest commissioned battleship, HMS Prince of Wales, face off against the German battleship Bismarck and the heavy cruiser Prince Eugen. The two sides open fire, and the Battle of the Denmark Strait has begun. Minutes into the battle, Bismarck inflicts a devastating blow on HMS Hood, causing the aft magazine to detonate and breaking the ship in two, sinking the pride of the British Navy. Prince of Wales, now alone, continues its fight against Bismarck and Prince Eugen. However, following in the wake of Hood, Prince of Wales is herself an easy target and the battleship takes several hits, forcing Prince of Wales to retreat. Bismarck, however, has not escaped unscathed as the battleship is leaking fuel. For the British, the loss of Hood was sending shockwaves throughout the Empire. Known to the public as the unsinkable ship, the mighty Hood, she was no more, but her loss only strengthened the Royal Navy's resolve. The orders from Churchill and the Admiralty are clear: Bismarck must be sunk at all costs, and Fleet Admiral John Tovey, aboard his flagship HMS King George V, is in desperate pursuit of Bismarck, but catching her will take time. Shadowing Bismarck are the British heavy cruisers Norfolk and Suffolk, along with the battered HMS Prince of Wales. They are following behind Bismarck within range of their radar, relaying the positions of Bismarck and Prince Eugen to the rest of the British fleet. They're sailing in a zigzag pattern to avoid possible U-boat attacks. This causes them to occasionally lose radar contact with the Germans. Early in the evening of May 24, 1941, the British ships reacquire Bismarck on radar, only to notice that Bismarck has turned back on her pursuers. Bismarck then opens fire at extreme range. Repair crews aboard Prince of Wales have restored the majority of her guns to operational status, and Prince of Wales responds in kind. Both sides miss their mark, but just as quickly as Bismarck attacks, she turns away and begins to run again. The British radar crews resume shadowing the German battleship. However, now there is only one ship on radar. The attack was in fact a distraction, nothing more than a way to buy the undamaged Prince Eugen time and space to escape into the Atlantic. Admiral Tovey orders the aircraft carrier Victorious to race ahead and launch aircraft into action, in the hopes of slowing Bismarck. Nine Swordfish take off from Victorious. The squadrons of Swordfish biplanes are old, slow, and some say antiquated aircraft. However, they're the only torpedo bombers Victorious has available. Bismarck's anti-aircraft guns erupt in an explosion of tracers and flak. The Swordfish release their torpedoes, and their torpedoes race towards Bismarck, as the battleship begins to maneuver to try and evade. Further attacks from the remaining Swordfish come in. Bismarck turns hard to dodge the incoming threat. However, one torpedo manages to strike Bismarck directly amidships, right against the thick armour belt and torpedo defence systems. The Swordfish begin to return to Victorious, as Bismarck continues relatively unaffected. Despite the attack not inflicting any serious structural damage to Bismarck, the implications are dire. As long as Bismarck is being shadowed, it will be under constant attack. Lütjens must shake the British ships that are following him. He orders the battleship hard to starboard, steering around back over his own wake. Lütjens is allowing the British to pass by, whilst avoiding being detected by their radar. With the British vessels lost in the murk, Lütjens sets course for Brest, France. Meanwhile, the British cruisers are searching frantically to try and re-establish contact with the German battleship, but when their endeavours prove fruitless, they signal Tovey have lost contact with enemy. Tovey orders all ships to search north of Bismarck's last known position, believing that Lütjens is likely trying to seek refuge back in Norway. Unknowingly, Tovey heads in the opposite direction of Bismarck. May 25th, 1941. The Admiralty dispatches PBY Catalina flying boats to locate Bismarck, and on May 26th, such a Catalina is on patrol when its crew spots a large warship leaking fuel. It's Bismarck, 2 days' journey from the French coast. This information is swiftly passed through the chain of command until Tovey aboard King George V is informed. However, Tovey now has another problem. Many of his capital ships are critically low on fuel. Prince of Wales, the battlecruiser Repulse, the cruiser Suffolk, and crucially the aircraft carrier Victorious will all at some point have to depart due to fuel exhaustion. And Tovey is still hours behind Bismarck. There's another problem. At Bismarck's current speed, it's only going to take her a couple of days to get within range of Luftwaffe air cover. And if Bismarck is to be sunk, then action must be taken immediately before this can happen. To the south, there is a task force going by the name of Force H, comprising the aircraft carrier Ark Royal, the battlecruiser Renown, and the light cruiser Sheffield. Desperate to slow the German battleship, Ark Royal launches a flight of Swordfish torpedo bombers. With the worsening weather, they will have enough time for only 2 sorties. Sheffield moves ahead of Force H to try and establish contact with the German battleship. Unaware of this, the pilots of Ark Royal believe that Bismarck is the only ship in their search area and thus begin to attack Sheffield. The Swordfish drop their torpedoes, but thankfully the new magnetic detonators are faulty and cause many of the torpedoes to detonate almost immediately upon contact with the water. However, a few torpedoes fail to detonate and begin to run towards the British cruiser. Sheffield turns hard over and manages to dodge the remaining torpedoes. The Swordfish then return to Ark Royal, and a second flight sets out towards Bismarck, with their torpedoes rearmed with the more reliable contact fuses. The Swordfish close in on Bismarck. Flying only 15 feet above the waves, the Swordfish begin their attack. Bismarck turns hard to port to try and dodge the incoming weapons, but it's too late. A massive explosion on Bismarck's stern can be seen as the Swordfish begin to return to Ark Royal. Bismarck's large twin rudders are now jammed hard over to port, and the rest of the British Home Fleet closes the distance. Unable to fix the rudder, Lucian sends one final message to Berlin: "Ship unmaneuverable. We shall fight to the last shell. Long live the Führer." Tovey will wait until morning to finish off the German battleship, but he does send in destroyers and cruisers to harass the battleship throughout the night, with one destroyer, the Polish Piron, engaging the battleship in a duel for 45 minutes with its 4.7-inch guns. When the range closes, Piron begins firing at the German battleship with every gun it has. Miraculously, return fire from Bismarck fails to score any hits on the tiny destroyer. Piron then begins to signal Bismarck with its signal lamp, stating, "I am a Pole," until the hail of return fire from Bismarck begins to get a little too close for comfort and forces the destroyer to withdraw. With days of searching finally coming to a head on May 27, 1941, the British close in on Bismarck. Admiral Tovey plans to split Bismarck's fire amongst his ships. At his disposal are the flagship HMS King George V, armed with 10 14-inch guns, the ageing battleship Rodney, older, slower, and somewhat in disrepair, but she carries 16-inch guns, the largest the Royal Navy can field. And then there are the heavy cruisers Norfolk and Dorsetshire, each armed with 8 8-inch guns. These won't be able to punch through Bismarck's main armour belt, but they'll divide Bismarck's firepower and they can damage almost any other part of Bismarck, especially the unprotected superstructure. Early in the morning on May 27, 1941, Rodney is the first to open fire at 8:47 am. A salvo from King George V quickly follows. The British shells miss their mark on the German battleship. 3 minutes later, Bismarck returns fire, focusing its 15-inch guns on the battleship Rodney. Shells rain down all around the battleship as both sides adjust their aim. Another salvo and Bismarck shells straddle Rodney. The crew of Rodney expect to be hit, but then Rodney's 16-inch guns fire, and at 9:02 am, the shells of Rodney strike the forward fire control director of Bismarck. Bismarck's guns fall silent in the temporary absence of orders. The British fire away, with the range locked in, and salvo after salvo of 16-inch and 14-inch shells begin shattering Bismarck. They also manage to destroy the aft fire control director and disable the turrets. Rodney closes to 2,700 metres, point-blank range, and fires another salvo of 16-inch shells into Bismarck. Bismarck fires one final salvo in return. The British end up firing over 2,400 shells. Bismarck is reduced to nothing more than a floating, burning wreck, but despite this, the ship appears to stubbornly refuse to go under. Eventually, Tovey's warships are in danger of running out of fuel if they hang around any longer, and Tovey is forced to withdraw. He orders that Dorsetshire finish off Bismarck using torpedoes. A few remaining officers aboard Bismarck decide they'd rather see Bismarck sunk by their own hands, and claim that they order scuttling charges placed around the ship. Dorsetshire's torpedoes strike home, and the scuttling charges apparently take effect. Finally, the legendary battleship is sent to the seafloor, taking Gunther Lütjens, Ernest Lindemann, and 2,086 of the crew with her. Only 114 of Bismarck's crews would survive. It was a victory that came at a heavy cost for the British, but one that marked a turning point in the Battle of the Atlantic. The sinking of the Bismarck was a clear demonstration of British naval power and resolve, sending a message to the German High Command that the Royal Navy was more than a force to be reckoned with. As a direct result, Hitler would never again allow the German surface fleet into the North Atlantic, instead falling back on the U-boats to harass the Allied convoys.